The wagon reached the edge of the ranch just as the sun was pulling itself down into the desert. A red light bled across the scrub and mesquite, dust lifting in small curls behind the wheels. The horses were tired, their hides streaked with sweat. The men who rode beside them smelled of whiskey and dust. The woman in the back sat with her wrists bound loosely in front of her, the rope rough but not tight. They had joked that she might run, but she hadn't. She stared at the land, at the long horizon that offered no cover, no water, no escape. It was a country that belonged to her ancestors before the fences came, before the iron rails cut through it, before the names of rivers were changed to suit other tongues. One of the men laughed and said, "Bet he won't know what to do with her." Another answered, "He don't need to. It's just for a laugh. The boys'll get a kick out of it." She did not look at them. She watched the horizon darken, and she thought of her mother's voice singing the old songs while grinding corn, of her brother's laughter as he broke a colt by the river, of the smell of sage when the rains came. She thought of all that had been taken, and the silence that had replaced it. The ranch was little more than a scatter of buildings, a main house with a warped porch, a barn leaning like an old man, a corral, a well. The rancher stood on the porch when the wagon came, a tall man with shoulders bent from years of work. His face was brown from the sun, the lines deep. He didn't smile when he saw them. "What's this?" he asked. "Your wedding gift," one of the men said, laughing. "Figured you needed company out here. She's a good one. Don't talk much." The rancher's eyes narrowed. "This some kind of joke?" "Sure is. Ain't she something?" He didn't answer. He walked down from the porch, boots heavy on the dust, and looked at her. She looked back, straight into his eyes, and he saw something that made him turn away first. He didn't laugh, didn't smile, just said, "Untie her." The men hesitated. "She'll bolt." "She won't," he said. "Ain't nowhere to go." They untied her. The rope fell away. She rubbed her wrists, then stood and stepped down from the wagon without help. The men waited for her to run, but she didn't. She just stood there, still, her hair loose and tangled, her eyes steady. The rancher said, "You can go now." The men laughed again, shouted a few parting jokes, then turned their horses toward town. Their laughter faded with the sound of hooves, swallowed by the desert. When they were gone, the rancher said quietly, "I didn't ask for this." She said nothing. He sighed, took off his hat, wiped the sweat from his forehead. "You hungry?" Still she said nothing. He nodded toward the well. "There's water. If you run, you'll die. If you stay, I won't hurt you. That's all I can say." She watched him turn and walk toward the house. The door creaked open, then shut. The sky above was going violet, the first stars like ash scattered on dark silk. She went to the well, drew a bucket of water, and drank. The rope burned her palms, but the water was cool, and for a moment she closed her eyes. Inside, the rancher sat at a small table, staring at a plate of beans gone cold. He'd come west to escape the war, to build something of his own. The ranch was barely alive, half the cattle dead from drought, the rest thin and mean. He hadn't asked for company, least of all this woman, but he couldn't send her back either. He didn't trust the men who'd brought her, and he didn't trust the world beyond his fence. Outside, she looked toward the north, where the mountains stood like sleeping beasts. Her people had gone there once in retreat, driven by soldiers. Some had survived. She didn't know if any still lived there now. The wind carried the smell of dry grass, dust, and faint wood smoke from the kitchen. She felt the ache of her wrists, then turned toward the barn, seeking shelter. The horses snorted softly when she entered. She spoke to them in her language, words like water in their ears. They calmed, and she lay down in the straw. She did not sleep much. Dreams came, flashes of her brother's face, the burning of her village, the laughter of soldiers. She woke before dawn. The rancher found her there when he came to feed the animals. He didn't speak at first. He just worked, methodical, tired. When he was done, he handed her a piece of bread and a tin cup of coffee. She took them, cautious but hungry. "You got a name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said softly, "Taji." He nodded. "I'm Daniel." The day passed in silence. She helped with chores, drawing water, stacking feed. He watched her sometimes, saw the quiet efficiency in her movements, the way she never wasted motion. She learned the rhythm of the place, the creak of the windmill, the way the sun carved shadow from rock. As the days passed, an uneasy peace settled between them. He gave her space, she gave him silence. Sometimes she sang to herself in the early mornings, low songs like wind and grass. He didn't understand the words but found himself listening from the porch. One evening, a storm rolled in from the west, sudden and fierce. Lightning split the sky. Daniel ran to the barn to secure the doors, found her already there, tying the shutters, calm despite the thunder. When it passed, they stood together, watching the desert drink. The air smelled new, alive. He said, "You could go north, if you wanted. There's a trail. Might find others of your kind." She turned to him. "You would let me go?" He nodded. "You don't belong here." She looked at him for a long time. "And you?" He looked away. "Don't think I belong anywhere." For the first time, she almost smiled. Days turned to weeks. Word reached them through a passing rider that the men who had brought her had been boasting in town, saying they'd tamed a wild thing. Daniel said nothing, but that night he saddled his horse and rode out. He came back near dawn, his knuckles raw, his shirt torn. He said nothing about what happened, and she didn't ask. That morning, she set a bowl of water by his door. A gesture of thanks. Neither spoke of it. When summer deepened, the ranch grew harsher. The riverbed dried to cracked clay. The cattle wandered farther each day. Daniel grew gaunt. She began to take charge of the chores, tending the animals, finding cactus fruit and mesquite beans, things he didn't know could be eaten. Slowly, he began to listen to her advice. One evening, as the sun bled red over the land, she said, "You were not like them." He said, "No. But I didn't stop them either." She nodded. "Now you have." He didn't ask what she meant, but in her tone there was something final, a settling of debts. That night, the desert was still. Coyotes called in the distance. She stood outside the house, the wind lifting her hair. The stars seemed close enough to touch. She felt the weight of everything, her past, his silence, the endless land that held them both. "We're alone," she said quietly, almost to herself. "It's time to do what must be done." He heard her through the open window, though he didn't understand what she meant. In the morning, she was gone. At first he thought she'd run north, but when he looked toward the corral, he saw the gate open, the horses free. In the distance, he saw the faint trace of smoke from where the men's camp had once been. He rode out later and found nothing but ashes. When he came back, the ranch was quiet. On the table sat a small bundle wrapped in cloth, inside, a turquoise pendant carved in the shape of a bird. He recognized it from the day she arrived. He understood then that she had gone not to flee, but to return. He stayed at the ranch for another season, though he spoke little, and sometimes he thought he heard her voice on the wind, singing the old songs. He began to mark the moons by her way, planting when she would have planted, harvesting what little the land allowed. Years later, travelers passing through said they saw a woman near the mountains, leading a band of people through the desert, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes fierce as stormlight. Daniel never went to find out if it was her. He didn't need to. He knew that when she said those words, "We're alone, it's time to do what must be done," she had meant not vengeance, not survival alone, but the reclaiming of something stolen, her name, her will, her people's place in the land. And the desert, silent as ever, kept her secret.